and we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. It's our October Superintendent's Roundtable for ARSA, and we're glad that you were able to make it. I know that we're coming off of a busy weekend and started the week with the ASA conference, and some of you were up there, but glad that you're able to make it with us this morning. Appreciate you being here. My name is Melissa Sadorf, and I'm the superintendent of the Stanfield Elementary School District in Pinal County, and I also serve as your ARSA president-elect. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, Sean Rickert. Sean.
Good morning. My name is Sean Rickert, and I've met most of you. I'm the superintendent at the Pima Unified School District over here in Eastern Arizona, located in sunny Graham County, next to the Gila River. I also work with Melissa, and ARSA is a member of the executive committee, as the advocacy coordinator and the Southeast Arizona representative. So I'd like to welcome you to this meeting we're having today. Hope you've brought your thinking caps, because we have a great opportunity to ask some questions today. We're joined by the illustrious Joe O'Reilly, who, if you don't know Joe, you're in for a treat, because he's a guy that comes up with answers to questions that nobody even thought to ask yet. Working with ASU's Decision Center for Educational Excellence, which is now being also partly sponsored through the Helios Foundation. So it's the ASU Helios Decision Center. But this is an organization that Joe's been with for, gosh, what I want to say 4 years now. Joe, is that about right?
Yeah, it's about 3.5. Yeah,
3.5, 4 years, and some incredible information has been is over there through their ability to gather and then crunch data, which is something that is near and dear to my heart. Before Joe embarked on this adventure, he worked with Mesa Schools, doing a lot of data crunching for them. He was also very involved. Where I first worked with Joe actually was on the advisory group to the Accountability Ad Hoc Committee of the state board, and that was a while back. And he's been doing this and understanding the needs of public education and especially supporting the rurals for quite a few years. We won't go into how long it's been, Joe, because we don't want.
Appreciate that.
But we're glad to have you. And I know that Melissa made Joe a co-sponsor so that he can put up his slides. He's got some slides to share with us today to show some. If you had a chance to see Joe's presentation up in Sedona, I understand that this is going to be kind of similar. Obviously the big advantage here is, it's a small room, which means that we have the opportunity to ask questions. And I know Joe enjoys people asking questions, because that's part of what helps him to kind of spur on his process to what comes next and making things that are great even better. So thank you, Joe, for coming.
Sure.
I'll just turn the time over to you, and as questions come up for me or for other people, we'll encourage you to just interrupt you if that's okay.
That's fine. And thank you for having me, because as I was doing this, a lot of the stuff I'm doing, I'm thinking about the rural districts that don't have the capacity that maybe a Mesa has or others, that how can we share information that would be useful to you. So I'm going to share my, this is very similar, almost exactly the presentation we had in Sedona, a little bit updated. And it's the ASU Helios Decision Center for Educational Excellence. And back up. And Helios funds us, and we've been in place for about 3.5 years. The idea being, let's bring together the data we have on the education system, the stakeholders of the education system, all the varied stakeholders, and the resources of ASU and Helios, and see how we can move the education system forward. So some of our projects, we have a project called the High School Outcome Tool, which is a kind of a 7-screen visualization. We just did it with Holbrook. He presented some of his data. Santa Cruz Valley Unified David presented some of his. And it's basically all the census data and the high school outcome data, and communities come together, and mayors and community groups have really gotten into that in terms of how do we advance our economic development. We've looked at things like the National Student Clearinghouse, how those rates actually underrepresent college going because kids can opt out of sharing their data with you. We helped ADE of all the students who disappeared during the pandemic, helped identify who are the kids that they left you, but you don't know whether or not they went somewhere else. So we can track them down. And so we were able to do some of that for ADE. We're doing research on the pathways out of high school to post-secondary. So we finished a report on advanced placement. We're doing one now on dual enrollment, and the next one's going to be on CTE. We have a project where we're looking at longitudinal math course taking, looking at what happens to students from a student point of view instead of our point of view. We have a pilot at Phoenix Union actually with this September when the kids came back. All the kids who met the ABOR requirements got a letter saying you're accepted to ASU before they even applied, because they have a lot of students there that think I'm not college material. I can't afford college. So we're looking to see if they get a letter saying you're accepted before you even apply. You're getting free tuition and maybe more as you fill out the FAFSA and other things. And your cost of the application can be free by answering a couple of questions. So that's kind of something we're excited about seeing if it works. And if it works, how can we expand it to other places? And we're starting some stuff on the education of the workforce. So I just got out of a meeting. We're looking at what's the workforce data, how many degrees and certificates we're producing, how many kids are university ready who leave or community college ready, and how do those three systems fit together. So a lot of interesting things that we're working on, but I want to talk today about our post-secondary feedback reports. And this came about because the school district asked the question. Chandler went to ABOR and said, we really want to know what happens to our kids when they go to college. We have no idea. They leave us, and yeah, we have the clearinghouse data, but that just tells us, do they go, do they graduate? And, don't you have more data, ABOR? And ABOR kind of came around and said, well, to tell you the truth, we don't have data. The universities have data. And when we have a question, we ask them to give us that data. So, but we know a group that may have the data you're looking for. And so, so we met with ASSIST, which has all the data on community colleges and state universities, and the Decision Center, and Chandler and ABOR. And that's how this project started. And what the questions were that Chandler came with was, we say we prepare our kids for college and careers, but how do our kids actually do? When they saw the data, they said 20% of our kids are getting B's or F's and withdrawing from math in college. What's going on between what we're doing and what's happening in college? So how do we strengthen that articulation? Can we get feedback for more than math and English, which is what you get now from the ABOR reports, their first English and math course. And yes, we can give you how they did in CT courses and others. And they're interested in equity. So are the students who are going to college and going to university representative of all our graduates? So those are some of the questions we talked about. How could you answer those? And as I mentioned, we got together between the Decision Center, our AZ Transfer, which was set up to collect all the data from community colleges and state universities. So when a kid transfers, they can transfer the data easily. And so we're tapping that resource. The Board of Regents, who partly funds AZ Transfer and brought us all together. The Arizona Department of Education, which is one of our partners. And as we do more and tie some of our data to the K-12 data, the department will be part of that. And I think someday you may say, I want to see I want to know how exactly individual kids did. And that would require going through the Department of Ed in terms of delivering student level data to you. But that we're not there yet. And Helios is funding this and is very supportive of this work.
So,
go ahead.
So let me just step in for just a second, Joe, just because the question occurs to me, I remember a presentation a couple of years ago from I want to say it was the head of ABOR, but I can't remember exactly what the position was. Anyway, but they came to us and they said, we're concerned because the percentage of college completers, when you take all of the students that go from 8th grade, and then enter the secondary system and then go on to the post-secondary system and actually arrive at a post-secondary, at an undergraduate degree, that the percentage was, dismal. It was depressing.
For Mesa, for low-income kids, it's 9%. It is very low.
And so, and for the state, I want to say it was less than 20. It was less than 1 in 5 8th graders was actually achieving a degree. But it seems like this is targeting more. We're jumping ahead to the kids that graduate from high school, and then we're slicing and basically looking at those kids who graduate from high school and then go on to post-secondary. Is that, and if I'm jumping ahead in the presentation, I apologize. I just kind of.
Right, that's where we're starting. So of your students who go on to college, where do they go? How do they do? And then you might have a question about what are the kids who don't go on to college or go on to college late? Could you tell us about those students? And those are possible future avenues that are going to depend on what schools want to use and what's important to schools. So I'm a school district person who's worked with schools for a long time, so I want to make the data useful. And I meet with Crow every 12 weeks, and he's like, "What have you done for school districts lately?" That's his first question. And how are they using it? So it's not to do research; it's to move the needle for the education system. So let me just show you how kind of what we're looking at, and some of the questions you may have are, what should our next steps be? So the questions or report answers that I'll share today is, what are the grades students are getting in their subject areas in college? So in math, what percent got A's, B's, and C's? How many got D's and F's? How many withdrew? What were their majors? What were their GPAs overall? Did the college goers match the graduates? Did students access financial aid? And we have that at the community college, but not the university level at this point. What degrees and certificates were earned? So certificates haven't been anywhere else before. And I remember talking out in Western Arizona, and Salome said, well, our kids don't go to a lot of colleges, but they do get certificates. Do you have certificates? And I had to say no. Well, now the community colleges are reporting certificates, and we're collecting that. So at least we get the community college certificates, not necessarily the ones by for-profit organizations, but at least it's the start. So these are going to officially be released November 10th at the Helios Education Campus. You're getting a sneak peek today. And I want you to know that what we're releasing is version 1.0. And I expect, we are going to be updating that with different reports, different improvements on the existing reports based on the feedback we get. So I'm going to look at 5 different reports. We've separated community college from university because those are kind of 2 different animals in terms of students going on to post-secondary. So we kept those separate so you can look at them separately. And we also have dual enrollment. So kids who take dual enrollment courses, how do they do? And this is the summary report for community colleges. And can you see this, or do I need to kind of, okay? So what this reports, and this is a sample high school, you would see your particular, we have it by high school and by district. So you would see for your district, these are the 2017 grads. On the left-hand side, how many went to community college? How many were full-time and part-time? What percent of students transferred to a university of those who went to community college, or how many transferred to a university? How many got financial aid? So if you have a lot of students on free and reduced lunch and few students getting financial aid, that's a disconnect that probably needs to be addressed. And then you can see the degrees awarded, the certificates awarded, and what community colleges serve your community. And showing this to some people in Douglas, it was surprising how far those kids went to go to community college. They wound up, most of them were Cochise, but they were all over the state. And this brings all the community college data together. And it's not by a community college, it's by your students. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the GPAs, the male and female breakdown, and the ethnic breakdown of those who went to community college. Any questions about this? Just make sure you understand kind of the reports. If not,
Joe,
I'll go
I don't know enough yet to really have questions, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
I'm sitting here as pretending I'm still a high school principal and wishing that you, me, and my two guidance counselors were in the same room looking at this stuff. This is an ideal bridge to what I've always hoped for, which would be a K-14 system.
Yeah, it does promote that, yes.
Oh, it really does. This is truly remarkable. I'll be in a meeting with Cian Luke soon, right about noon. She's the executive director of Arizona School Counselors Association. And those people they need to see this if you've not already been in the same room with them.
It was a long time ago. They haven't seen where we are now, but I'd be happy to, if they would like to, I've presented to their board and we could do that again.
I will rattle that chain. I will rattle that chain at 12 o'clock today.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Sure. So here's the same report, but for universities. Now at community college, most people are general studies, so they don't really have a major. They do when they get a degree, but a focus. But so the universities, we have their majors. And then when we have enough graduates, it'll say the graduates and what degrees the graduates actually got. But it's similar to the other one with how many went, how many were full-time and part-time. And universities are mostly full-time. Community colleges are mostly part-time. You can see how many came from a community college. Okay. You can see what universities, how many students came from which university or went to which university and what their majors are. And, we've had one urban district superintendent was like, well, if that's what my kids are interested in, how are we prepared? What are we doing to engage kids in that area? How can what we're offering touch that? So those are the kind of things we want to promote in terms of discussions. And again, GPA, gender breakdown, and ethnic breakdown.
So I have just one question for you. On the universities, obviously the three major universities here, but do you look at data from any of the privates like GCU or any of the others?
So ASSIST only has data from the community colleges, not the tribal colleges, because I don't think they contribute, and the three state universities. There also is access to the National Student Clearinghouse data, which doesn't have the detail that we have here, but is thinking of building on a detail like this in the future sometime. But who goes, who persists, and who graduates, and if they graduate, what their major was. So we don't have that now. We're developing a data sharing agreement with ABOR, who pays for that for the state, and ADE, who is the one who uploads the file and downloads the file. So it's just a matter of more or less the paperwork of getting that. And then once we do that, how can we incorporate that into here to give you a full picture of, in the Valley, Grand Canyon has a lot of kids, and that's a big hole in our data. You may send some kids to, if I'm up in, Red Mesa, I'm probably sending some kids to Colorado for college, and where are they getting their feedback? So hopefully we do plan on filling that in, but this 1.0, it doesn't have that. So, and here's the part that's not in the clearinghouse at all. What this is in the community college classes, we have a similar report for the university by subject area, by department. How many kids took those classes? How many were successful? And we define successful as A's, B's, and C's. And that's because that's what's required to transfer to the university. But also when I was in Mesa, when I did our success report, basically, that's how I defined a kid who was ready, who was successful and is ready to go on to the next math course. They have enough fundamental maybe knowledge or close to it that they can go on. If they get a D, they're probably not ready for Algebra 2, for example. So here you have how many students, how many were successful. So for Allied Health, there were 1,063 students who took courses, 1,011 of them in the sample high school that we just created, got an A, B, or C, so that's 95%. That's 7.8 percentage points higher than the state average. So what you're getting here is relative to the state average, how you do. So it kind of gives you a normative, you can see how you're doing relative to the state average. And then how many got a D or an F, unsuccessful, and how many withdrew. So it gives you some idea what we've done so you don't have too small of a number. We've combined several years of students. We can also do it, and this is how we do dual enrollment, by cohort. So we could also do it by graduating class or when they start college. But so we didn't have too small of a number. We included multiple years. So that's the discussion we're going to have, is what's most useful to a school. But one of the feedback I got from a Marana principal was that, I've shown this to some people and they say, well, there's too much information here. And the high school principal said, absolutely do not get rid of any of that information. You can give me a report with less information, but give me the report with more information too, because I'm going to show this to my CT teachers, because we have CTE areas here. And we have a biology test, but we don't have anything on chemistry and physics. And you're showing me how they're doing when they get to college in chemistry and physics. So it's feedback for different departments and non-tested areas. So that's, it's kind of a lagging indicator, but it's an indicator of how well prepared kids are when they go to college.
Joe, can I jump
Sure.
in and ask a question real quick? So I'm in an elementary district. When an elementary district, I guess, is capable of gaining access to this information, will it just be for the high school students within their district boundaries, or can you also track students who have gone to your school for K through 8, but maybe not living in your district boundaries?
So we haven't done that yet. And one of the things we deal with is FERPA. So who can we share this data with? And you see there's some low numbers on here. And the agreement was kind of, we can share low numbers with a district who sent the student, because they still have an educational interest in the student. And that helps inform what they're doing as a school. I think you would have the same argument you could probably make for 8th graders, kids who are in your elementary district in 8th grade, and what happened to them when they went to high school and the university. We're not there yet, but if there was an interest in that, that is a possibility, because we also have the K-12 data. So we could say how many graduated, how many went on to college, and maybe some of this data. Now, if we start with 8th graders, that's going back to 2013 or 2014 or something, to see whether or not they got a degree. But we can have that discussion. The data's there, and I think giving feedback to an elementary district on how kids do in high school and college can be very powerful. We just haven't done that yet, but that's something we could work together to do if that is something of interest. So it's possible. We just haven't done it yet, but I like the idea of doing that.
I would be interested if you need someone to volunteer to go through the weeds on that.
And what district are you?
I'm with the Paloma Elementary School District, and we're just little, but we like to keep track of our students. So.
Yeah, are you like up by Wickenburg and over a little bit?
We're just west of Gila Bend.
Okay, yeah. I think your students do really well, if I remember correctly. I used to watch the districts, and I think yours would pop up as like doing better than expected.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, so let me go to my.
Hey, Joe. So one other question that occurs to me is, you've got this data for 17, but is this mostly based on newly reported data? I mean, did somebody at EZ Transfers just start gathering this information, or I mean, what's the capacity for kind of a longitudinal understanding
Yeah.
of these? I mean, how far back can we go?
Yeah, I think this is, the data you're seeing now is probably 19, 18, and 17 combined, because I think we combined 3 years. The other one was a class of 2017, just so you'd have some graduates and you could see some graduate results. That's why I included that. We have it through 2019. The 2020 data is just being, I think, going to be updated this spring from the community colleges. It's already in the system for the universities. And once that's available, we'll be adding it. But it lags like a year and a little bit in terms of getting clean data that the community colleges and universities are all comfortable with. There was no pressing reason they had to update the data quickly, because there wasn't really a use for it other than transferring. So if we start using it a lot, that could result in them updating it more frequently, especially if it's of use to them in terms of articulation.
But prior year data from like 15 or 16, that data.
That's in there. Yeah, we have multiple years of data in there.
Okay,
So
so going back, I mean, if a school wanted to see, okay, how are our students performing in this, this year, relative to the state average on biology courses compared to how they were before we implemented a change, would that be available?
Yeah, we have in our reports that we've set up so far, but depending on which report it was, it's 4 to 6 years. It goes back 4 to 6 years. And I think these reports go back 6 years. The AP reports go back 6 years, I think. So.
Excellent. And then
go ahead.
It's going to bug me, but where you've got the heading there, the AZ average success percentage. When I first looked at that, I thought, how do you have a negative success percentage? But once you explain that basically it's the delta between the distance. And I don't know if just including just a delta in there so that that it's the difference would maybe keep help people to remember that's why sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's negative. But
yeah, that's a good suggestion. We'll make a change like that. Thank you. And then at university, what we did was say, we don't want all university courses. You're going to have the biggest impact on the 100 and 200 level courses, not the 300 and 400 level courses where they're really getting their majors. So we limited it to those because those are probably most relevant to the impact a high school would have on a college going student. And it's, again, the same thing. It's by discipline. And you can see we start with art. I'm sure the art teachers had never gotten any feedback, how their kids did, even because there's no test, and other things. But here's the kids who went to college and majored in art. Here's how they did. And the change in the difference between the Arizona average in success and the school, and the same information. Okay. We have similar reports for advanced placement, but we do it by year. And so I'm not going to repeat that for all the kids who take advanced placement with community colleges, but you'll see those also as separate reports. And this is a report we put together, and we want to see if it's of interest. And Sean, this kind of answers the question you came up with before. We can take the results for every year. And here you see that we have 7 years, and we have the percentages of how many students took it, how many enrollments, how many classes did they take, how many were taken by different ethnic groups, how many were taken by males and females, when they took it. So freshmen are more or less the basis kids who start taking, if they take dual enrollment, a lot of them take advanced placement, but they're probably more advanced students for the most part, but juniors and seniors are where most of them take it. And what's really interesting is the grades. So if you look at 2019-20, so you can see, Sean, that's the most recent data we have. And it's a little bit, the numbers are a little bit smaller because we don't have second semester. Like 95% of the kids are getting an A, B, or C in their dual enrollment class. So students are being really successful. And one study we did was on advanced placement in the state. And what we found was 40% of the kids didn't even take the test. They took the course, but didn't even take the test. over like 10 years. So we looked at 10 years of data. Of those who took the test, if you're poor, if you're Hispanic, Native American, African American, the most frequent score you're going to get is a 1 or a 2. You're not going to get credit for college. But in dual enrollment, kids are being much more successful. Now, I don't have it broken out by, free and reduced lunch yet or any of that, but we are doing a study of that. We'll see how it works out. But a superintendent once asked me, the Wickenburg superintendent said, which do I do, AP or dual enrollment? Well, as I get into this, it looks like dual enrollment's the way to go. So don't tell College Board I said that.
But the next question then is, do those kids that are being successful in dual enrollment classes, does that translate into success, in the classes that they take in college after graduation?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've never met this gentleman. This isn't a plant, but my next slide is we wondered about that. We didn't do like a formal study, but we said, okay, all the kids who are taking AP, how do they do in their next class at college in that subject area? So this is biology. So you can see on the left-hand side, the students who are in dual enrollment take another biology at college, 54% of them get an A, and 26% get a B. Well, how do college students generally do in those courses? In the 100 and 200 level courses? Well, 40% get an A, and 29% get a B. So you can see that the coloring, the students who took AP in high school actually did better than the typical college student taking one of those biology courses do. And we did 14 comparisons, 14 subject areas. 13 of the 14, we saw the same pattern. Dual enrollment kids do better than the average college student in 100 and 200 level courses. In math, they did about exactly the same. So the only area where there was even a tie and the university kids didn't do better was math. So that actually surprised me, because I always wondered, do our dual enrollment kids have are they really prepared for going on? Well, they're doing as well in those classes as typical college students. Now, if I was talking to someone going into engineering, I would probably say, take that calculus class or take that, whatever that class is, again in engineering, because that's really fundamental to that major. So there may be some areas where you say, hey, it's probably best you retake it. You got some fundamental knowledge. You'll probably get even deeper knowledge by taking again at the university level. But generally, those kids are not at a disadvantage in terms of their performance. So, and we did this because we had the same question you had, Sean, in terms of how is people doing?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what we're going to make available to people are reports, and you'll see a screen like this. I just shows a high school, but the format is the same. So you get to see the community college feedback and university feedback. Those are the summary reports. You get to see the course benchmark reports that we talked about. You get to see dual enrollment, and I can see here we have 4 years of some data on there. And we'll be adding more things as this goes on. We've talked about, should there be you get a report on first year English and math from ABOR. And so, as I said, ABOR, we have all this data. Why make every university and community college institutional research department put something together where we could program a report with even more data and give it back? So could we save them some time and effort? Could we make the reports more useful to the high schools and districts? So these are the reports we're starting with, but as I said, this is 1.0, and my next question is, could we do it by course? And we can do it by course, but what we're finding is there are a million courses with a million different names, and how do we combine them? But we could, there are some courses like college algebra that everyone gets. There are, English 101, English 102. So what would be most useful to people in schools and districts? When we get that answer, that kind of is going to help us direct our next efforts. So you may say to yourself, how do I get this report? So we're having an event on November 10th at the Helios Education campus. Helios has a new building. This is their first big public event. And so they want to show off their building and this information. So at that event, we're going to give people credentials so they can log on and see their own district and their own schools. And once you log on, you'll see your reports for your school. And if you're at a district level, you'll see your district with a little drop down to pick out the schools within your district if you have more than, however many schools you have. So I'm going to invite you, anyone on this call or anyone from your Rural Schools Association, if act now, operators are standing by. It's going to be November 10th at 8 a.m. It's at 8 a.m. because of Dr. Crow's schedule, to tell you the truth. It was when he was available and he was like, I want to talk to people about this. So I said, okay, if we're going to do that, then we're going to pay for the hotels for people to get here. Because I know when I went up to Mojave, I had to leave at 5 a.m. for a 10 o'clock meeting. So, it's not easy to get here. And the hotel that they've arranged is the Embassy Suites next to the Biltmore Fashion Square, Fashion Park, or whatever they call it. So it's a nice hotel and it's the night before. So anyone who would like to come, just contact Liz Sanchez, there's her email, and tell her you need accommodations. And this is specifically for out county, people. So it's for your members in terms of, we're not giving it to the people from Maricopa, but or the Apache Junction, who's just barely Pinal. But if you're coming from 2 hours away or more, then we do have some accommodations if that's necessary. So we want to make it easy for people to come, and Helios would like to show off their new building and show you what they've developed and what their goals are. So we are going to have a panel of some people from different districts we've worked with on developing these reports and talk a little bit about their perceptions of them. So if you can make the 10th, we'd love to have you, and just RSVP, and anyone who gets this PowerPoint could do the same. So that leads us to our next steps. And as Sean said, it's like, let's do something fun with this. So it really depends on, what is going to be most interesting to schools. One thing, as we've looked at the data, is we said, who is outstanding in terms of sending kids to the university and they're successful. So, and we kind of said, okay, they have to send at least 20 kids. But what we're finding is, like, Thatcher is one of the highest performing districts in terms of sending kids. I think it's to biology. And so our folks met with the folks at Thatcher and said, what are you doing? And how did you do that? I think Benson has a computer science program that they're sending kids to the university, and those kids are acing it. So it's not just Hamilton High School. I mean, it's all over the state. We have these, pockets of excellence. So that's another way we're using the data to kind of highlight who's being successful, including probably a lot of your members. So that's something else we're going to be doing, and we really need your feedback and participation, especially districts that say this is helpful to me to what I currently want to do in my district. This is going to be something. Some people say this is a nice report, thank you, I'll look at it again next year when you come out with a new one. That's fine, but I really want the people who are going to how do we use this, and what can we learn as we use it, so we can share that with other people. So that's kind of the engagement that I'm hoping to have with at least some of your members. So I think that's it. And we do have, there were actually 3 of us. Now there are 5 of us at the Decision Center. I mean, it sounds like a big name, but there's not a lot behind it. But Rebecca McKay is the director of Assist, and she's so excited about this. She's now working for us part-time and doing her job at Assist part-time. She's keeping her whole full job, but just working part-time there. And then we have a fellow from Harvard who's a strategic data project fellow. And this is one of his projects, is supporting districts and helping districts and schools use this information. So one of the challenges is if we just give you a report, that may not be that helpful. But if we give you a report and some support and some information and kind of share best practices in different schools, maybe that would make it more useful to you. So that's another thing that we can kind of offer for people who say, hey, I want to be involved in that. So really with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just open it up to questions or comments. And Jennifer Johnson's on, so I did mention, Jennifer, I think before you got on, that our plan eventually is getting the clearinghouse data, which has private colleges within Arizona and out-of-state colleges, and trying to see how we can incorporate that into this information. So,
Thank you.
Joe, I have a question. Have you done any crosswalk with teacher data in the different districts and how you might be able to see how they correlate? Does that make sense?
We haven't, but your student teacher course connection data that you upload,
Yep.
it's the courses kids take, the person who teaches it, and sometimes the grade. We have all of that data and we can look at it. What we did initially was just look at who's teaching where. And if you haven't seen it, we've done teacher reports on the teacher workforce and how it changed in 2021. And we'll do it again this January to see how it changed again with the pandemic. And part of that is we did a report for every county. What did their teacher workforce look like in 2020? And we'll do it again this January to see what does it look like now. One of the things we saw with the rural teacher workforce was the average age was about 5 years older than the state average. So they're that much closer to 50, 52 when they start retiring. So that was something very noticeable. But we haven't yet tied teacher to course, but we have the data to do that. So, and we have the data to do some things at the elementary level, but we started with high school and the college connection. And our plan is to do, our focus is preschool through employment. So we started at the college, end of high school, college, workforce end, but we're working back to the elementary grades.
That's great.
So you've got this massive data set. I mean, and the reports that are going out to school districts are extremely valuable and can definitely, I can see a million ways that they can help principals and as Wes was mentioning, guidance counselors to, better structure the way that they support students. But what kinds of questions are being asked by people at the department, at the state board, about what we're seeing here, what you guys are seeing in this data, and what we're seeing as far as school performance or school performance metrics, or I mean, is anybody looking at this and saying, okay, if our goal is to have schools that get more kids to college, what are the factors that are correlating with that success? Or am I asking a question that nobody's even really using this for yet?
Yeah, I'd say they're not using it for it yet, but that's that yet thing is something we're probably going to be saying all along as we do this. The last time I talked to Dr. Crowe, he said, I want to see analysis and action in one breath. So we put this together and we're getting it out to schools, and then we can do some studies. One principal said to me, I really don't care how my Hispanic kids do. I want to know what courses are gatekeepers and what courses are gateways for their success in college, either in high school or at the university. And that was like, wow, that's kind of a fun, that is really an important thing for us to look at, especially when you have statewide data. So that's one of the things that we're looking into to see how can we analyze that, what could we find. And it's not like he doesn't care about his Hispanic students, but what he cares about is where are kids not succeeding, what's holding them back, and what's greasing their skids so they can get they can go into college and be successful. So, so that's one of the things we're thinking of. And you're seeing it as we get through this, you know, and put the reports together, that's going to lead to more studies and more analysis and different things. So just like with the teacher data and looking to see what's going on. What we found is that a lot of districts don't and the State Department kind of said, don't worry about grades. So we don't have how kids do in classes. We just know the courses they took. So that's a challenge. The project we're doing with Phoenix Union is we had to get their grades from them because it wasn't in the student-teacher course connection to look at who's ABOR ready. And we're trying to, for the state, define who is ABOR ready in all districts around the state. Who meets those 16 course requirements, and have a 3.0 GPA. So right now we can say who meets the course requirements, and the GPA, well, we don't really know. But so we're going to be looking at questions like that as we get them from the field. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Growth mindset, not yet.
Right.
Oh yeah, this
We
is,
know Joe back as a high school principal again. Of course, I'm interested in how my kids, my graduates do in college, and what those outcomes look like. But I'm also interested in their workforce outcome, those who choose to go into the workforce. And I realize that's going to be much more difficult to measure. How do you quantify success? You know, in college, it's easy. You quantify success as graduation, as enrollment. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about my kids who decide that university is not for them and they want to go into the workforce. How do we measure, or can we ever measure their success in the workforce?
Well, yeah, as I approach that, I think of the old East Germany versus West Germany. East Germany put in different gauge railroad tracks. So there's no way of taking a train from West Germany and driving it out to the East Germany railroad tracks. The same thing, we can't use Social Security numbers. We're not allowed to use those in K-12, but that's the key to the universities use them and the workforce uses them. So that's what's holding us back a little bit there. Now, once they go to a community college or university, there may be a way of capturing that information to see how they do in the workforce. But the challenge is, if that doesn't happen, we don't have a way of tying that student to the workforce. Now, the Office of Economic Opportunity is doing a project trying to bring together the data, all the data, the executive level data, which means corrections, health services, DES, education would provide some data. And how do you bring all that data together? And that's the workforce data. So we'll be in some discussions with them as well in terms of, okay, how could we connect some of these things? And they're trying to solve it too. They're taking a different approach, but at some point we're going to be, you know, that's kind of the next step. The Board of Regents takes the Social Security numbers of all of their graduates and gives it to DES and gets back a report. Doesn't say who the kids are, but says, this is how many of your graduates are still in Arizona after 1 year, after 5 years, 10, 15 years. And here's how much they're making, because they have to, you know, you have to pay unemployment insurance. And, you know, and so they have some track on that. And so they're also looking at how could we look at the data in the whole country. So ABOR has solved that for ABOR students. Now that hasn't been done for community college students yet because ABOR is in charge of them, but you know, that might be possible. And then for our students, it would have to be those who went to a community college or university that we found out how their students did when they went to the workforce and tie it back to the high school, just like we talked about tying back high school graduation and college going to the middle school. So that's the only way I see of solving it in the short term anyway.
Oh, and I also wanted to thank you. I have never heard the term grease the skids in a webinar before. So I want to let you know that I appreciate hearing that from you.
I'll wait till I say that there's a butt for every saddle, and that's so we're not just looking at college, we're looking at all the different ways that kids can do. How about that, Wes?
Well done, Brother O'Reilly.
So we could conceivably do the same thing with high school graduates that we do with ABOR graduates, where you basically take their social security numbers and report it to the Department of Labor and say, okay, tell us what the earning, I mean.
Yeah, you'd have to have certain data sharing agreements and different things, but most importantly, you'd have to have social security numbers. And I think we're precluded from collecting social security numbers. At least that was my understanding when I was at Mesa, was that the state.
If you don't have for certain reasons, you do get into kind of, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, I bet we could get us some legal advice on that and find out just what the possibilities are.
Yeah, I think there's some legislation to protect student privacy.
Well, there's
yeah.
And
Arizona's very much into protecting student and family privacy. And having worked in Mesa for 30 years, I understand that. And that was I did that all the time. So that's very important.
Huh. Well,
Few minutes left. Are there any other questions from any of the other attendees want to throw out there?
Will you forward this PowerPoint to us so that we can get all the information?
I will, and we'll also, Sherry, will post the recording on our YouTube channel and send that out too. So we have it for documentation and you can go back and revisit.
Thank you.
You bet.
yeah, look for an email from Wes, probably first thing tomorrow, that will just it'll have all that, have the link to the recording, it'll have the PowerPoint. And we'll just send it out to all membership, just kind of following up. So.
Great.
And hopefully some of you can join us on the 10th at the Helios campus, so you can see the campus and hear Dr. Crow talk about this and Helios talk about it. Hear a couple of districts talk about how they plan on using it, and then getting your own data.
So if we can't attend on the 10th, should we contact
Email me.
Elizabeth?
No, if you can't attend on the 10th and you want your information, email me, joseph.o'reilly@asu.edu. It's in the PowerPoint. And after the 10th, I will send you a login and some information on accessing the data. So.
Wonderful.
I would love to be there, but I have a prior commitment.
Yeah. And it's only 2 weeks away. I can understand that, but I just wanted to make people aware and make people aware of the potential of these reports.
Great opportunity.
Yeah, we're on our way to Indianapolis on the 10th for who goes to Indianapolis. But apparently a bunch of us are in ARSA.
Yeah.
For rural educators.
Yeah, there you go.
You can see the curve. You can see the curve of the earth. It's so flat. That's what I remember of Indianapolis.
Yeah. Well, Joe, as I said in my chat to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Wes.
We'll do anything we can, and this is information that has tremendous capacity for rural schools, as you well know. I don't know why I'm stunned, because this is Joe O'Reilly stuff, but I'm stunned at what we can do, or what you've been able to do.
Great.
And
Thanks,
now
Wes.
I have to leave everyone. I've got to go to an executive director's meeting. I'll get that out as soon as I get it.
Thanks, Wes.
Bye, everybody.
Well, and I want to say before we end, a couple of just announcements. Number one, we will be sending this out so that you've got the recording, the PowerPoint, and Joe's contact information. If you are not able to make it to the November 10th opportunity, look for an email. Will help Joe get that out so that you understand that you have some opportunities to look at your own data. That's fantastic. A couple just real quick reminders. Number one, we did send out a survey and asked for some feedback on our mission and vision as part of our strategic planning. So if you have not already provided that input, please make sure that you do so. It's 2 more days that you have to provide that. So please look for that email. We'll be sending that out as well. And then just a reminder, we have a general membership meeting in December at the ASBA ASA conference. It's going to be at dark 30 as always, and the room will be announced at a later date. So please, if you're able to join us, make sure that you put that on your calendar. So, and finally, Joe, thank you very much for being our guest today. This was a phenomenal session, right information, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Okay.
Have a great day, everybody.
You too.
Thank you, you as well.